Luke chapter 10. Jesus comes to the home of Mary and in the text, and these are the sisters of Lazarus. And so he has come to the town of Bethany, which in the days of the New Testament was a suburb of Jerusalem. It was about 1.5 miles outside of the city walls. I guess today it would be inside the city, the way cities grow. But in that day, it was a village that was outside of Jerusalem. And so Jesus has come out to the town of Bethany, maybe for a little relaxation, getting away from the crush of Jerusalem. And he comes out and he's going to stay at the home of Mary and Martha. And so what happens? The things that happen here have a lot to teach us about how we should order our priorities in living for God, especially at this time of year. See, this lady right here had a tough job today, didn't she? Because we got so much going on in the church, it's hard to keep it all straight, isn't it? Because we have so many activities so many events that we're trying to hold, and I'm leading one, so I'm part of it too. So how does that text apply to what we're going through right now? Let's look at it. Verse 38. Jesus comes to the home of Mary and Martha. Now, the implication here is that when he came to the house, it wasn't just him. Okay? The implication is that he brought a crowd with him. And how do we know that? We know that because in the New Testament, he almost brought a crowd everywhere he went. Every time he would go somewhere, there would be a crowd. So whenever he goes to the home of Mary and Martha, it's safe to assume that there was at least the disciples and there was several other people who wanted to be a part of what's going on. So when you look at the text in verse 38, you can envision a full house of people, a crowd, and there is a bustle of activity as the home is prepared to host Jesus, the great man. There was a hubbub. You know what a hubbub is? A hubbub is what you had before church when everybody's just talking. Hubbub, 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 hubbub. Everybody's just talking to each other. Hubbub, 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 hubbub. And there's like a low, yeah. But this is even bigger because there's a crowd. But in the midst of this hubbub, Mary walks in, and apparently Jesus has come in and taken a seat. And Mary, even though it's her house and her responsibility, she walks in and she plants herself right at the feet of Jesus. Just right off the bat. She chooses to sit at Jesus' feet and be taught by him. Verse 39. She ignores every obligation. She ignores every duty in order to spend time in the presence of Jesus. Even though it's her house, and even though in that culture, in the ancient Near Eastern culture, the way that you showed hospitality to guests, important. It was a mark of stature, and it was a mark of prestige in that how you hosted people. And if you were an ungracious host, that was considered a scandal, and that would destroy you in the minds of the society. So that when you hosted something, you had to be the wedding at Cana. It was a scandal that they ran out of wine. Oh no, it's going to be terrible. We treated our guests badly. And so Mary should have known that when all these people were coming to her house, she needed to take care of the guests. But instead she says, I do not care about the guests. I just want to sit here and be taught by Jesus. All right, now follow me. I'm going somewhere. How do you live a successful life as a believer? Make a list of priorities. And if you're married, sit down with your spouse and decide together, what is important to us? We should all make a list of priorities. And then once you make a list, do the things that are at the top of the list first. Because you know what happens to us so often? Number one, we don't make a list of priorities. And then little things that are not important but are urgent take all of our time up, and we never get to the things that are most important. And then we come to the end of the day and we say, how did I forget to do X, Y, and Z? Or A, B, and C, as the case should be. How did I forget to do these things? Where did my day go? Where did my week go? Where did my year go? It's because you never made a list of priorities. We talk in leadership about how to be an effective leader. And the way to be an effective leader is to make a list of priorities and do the things at the top. But what about the other things? Don't do them. You know why? Because none of those things are really that important anyway. And in a year, when you look back, you're not even going to remember that you didn't do those things. So often, we waste our time doing things that are at the bottom of the list instead of doing the things that are at the top of the list. So make a list. What do we talk about? Christmas season. He's making a list and checking it twice. Well, make a list, folks. Really, if you want to change your life, and in leadership, we talk about how the most important leadership in your life is how you lead yourself. What does that even mean? You have to lead yourself, and then you lead in your marriage, and then you lead in your home, and then you lead at your job, and then you lead in your church, and then you lead everywhere. But your first leadership is leading yourself. You have to organize your own life first. So make a list and then do the things at the top. You will find a revolutionary change in your life when you start doing that. Because when you really sit down and decide what the priorities are, and then you start doing the most important things first, you're going to see changes. You're going to see changes. Okay. Now verse 40. Mary's sitting at the feet of Jesus. She's just sitting and listening, being taught. And Martha is consumed in the hubbub. And she notices that Mary is shirking her duties. Verse 40. You see it? And she comes to Jesus to complain. Oh, are you serious? Yes. How could she do that? How could she be a complainer? We never complain. When you are doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, you will usually complain about it. When you're doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, you will usually complain about it. Think about it. Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of a church thing and you're complaining? Ask yourself, was I doing the wrong thing or doing it for the wrong reason? That's why I complain. When your priorities are out of order. Okay? When your priorities are out of order, the first symptom of that is a judgmental spirit and complaining. So Martha looks at her sister and she has a judgmental spirit toward her sister. And then she goes to Jesus and complains about her sister not doing any of the work. Now, hang with me. I'm going to preach in a few minutes, but you just got to hang with me for this. When people don't have their priorities in order, when they are doing the wrong things, and when they are doing things for the wrong reason, they will be susceptible to a judgmental spirit. They will look at other people and they will say, why isn't anyone else working like me? Why isn't anyone else giving like me? Why doesn't everyone else care as much as I do? You see what Martha said? She went to Jesus and she said, don't you care? What is she saying to Jesus? She's saying, Jesus, you don't care as much as much as I do about how things get done. Oh, Jesus. Are you kidding me? She went to Jesus, the God man, and complained to him and said, you don't care? Now we're all judging Martha, aren't we? Newsflash, we're just like her, folks. She says two things. She says, don't you care? She says, why are you allowing this? Jesus, I am exhausting myself here. I'm killing myself trying to take care of you. And what does Jesus say? He doesn't say it in so many words, but he says, you're doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason. So that's one thing she says. And then she says, in so many words, she says, it's not fair. It's not fair that I have to do all the work and my sister gets to sit here and do nothing. But she's not doing nothing. See, that's the crux of the message. But when you have a judgmental spirit, you look at what somebody else is doing and you say they're doing nothing. But Jesus looks at it and says they're doing the very thing that they should be doing. Whew. It's not fair. So judgmental spirit, don't you care? And it's not fair. That's how you can spot it. I'm having to do all the work. I'm missing out on the blessing. And then Jesus responds in verse 41 and 42. He addresses all of her complaints in two short statements. Look at it with me. Verse 41, he says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things. Okay, church, highlight that if you have a highlighter or a pencil or a pen or an iPad. Just put it and go whoop with your finger, because that message is to you, folks. That message isn't to Martha. That message is to you. You're worried and upset about many things. And especially when we come into Christmas time and Thanksgiving, we get worried and upset about many things. I got to go to this party. I got to go to this family gathering. I got to get this dinner ready. I got to plan for this event. I got to do this and I got to do this. And Jesus says, you're worried and upset about many things, but you are wasting physical and mental energy on things I did not tell you to do. And he's telling Martha this, but by extension, he's telling all of us this. When you waste time and energy on things that Jesus didn't tell you to do, that is not God's fault. When you waste your time and energy because you worry about things at the bottom of your list instead of the top, that is not God's fault. He says in verse 42, these things are not truly necessary. Only a few things are truly needed. In fact, only one thing. You see it? But wait a second. But Jesus, there's 40 people here. How will we have a meal if I don't do all? I got to set the chairs just right. I got to do I got to make the meal. I got to make the food. I got to put out the tables. I got to set the table. I got to, how is everything going to get done if I don't do it? Well, you know what? I think Jesus can handle that. Now let me preach for just a minute. You see, one time he was out in the middle of nowhere, and there was 5,000 people out there. And they had no tables, and they had no chairs, and they had no kitchen, and they had no fire. And it was time for a meal. And the disciples said, it's mealtime, and the people won't leave. What are we supposed to do? And Jesus said, it's all going to be okay, because they're in the right place. They're doing the right thing. They came out here to hear from me, and they won't leave because they're hungry for food that doesn't come from a cow or a field, but it comes from on high. And I'm going to take care of it. He said, what do we got? He said, all we got's these 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I can imagine Thomas, the doubter, saying, oh, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work. And Jesus said, okay, no problem. Just start handing it out. And they started handing it out. And every time they would hand out, they would come back to the plate and there would be food. And every time they would hand out, they would come back to the plate and there would be food. And every time they would hand out, they would come back to the plate and there would be food. And everybody ate. The Bible says everybody ate until they were full. He said, blessed is he who hungers and thirsts after righteousness, for he shall be filled. Priorities. And then they said, how much we got left over? And they said, gather it up. And they had what, 12 baskets full of food? So they started with 5 loaves and fish and ended with 12 baskets, and 5,000 people ate. I think Jesus knows how to take care of a meal. Don't you see, Martha? Don't you see, church, that when we give him our time and we give him our heart and we want to sit at his feet, he knows how to take care of the details. He knows how to get things done. But we got to handle that. We got to handle that. And so we spend all our energy doing that. And the next thing we know, he's walking out and we have not sat at his feet at all. Well, we had a good meal. We had a good meal. See what Jesus was saying in verse 42, the second half of verse 42, to Martha, but he's also saying it to us, is that the most important thing in this moment, Martha, is that Mary be with me. In fact, Mary has made the better choice. He said it right there. You can look at it. You see, a meal can always be prepared. And in fact, this is the ladder of inference. Sorry, babe. Jesus could have spoken a meal. He could have said food, and boom, they could have had a house full of food. But Jesus will not always be in that house. So, there will come a time where I will not be here in the physical. There will come a time where I'll be in another town, or I'll be in Jerusalem, or I'll even be crucified and resurrected and ascended to heaven. And in that time, Mary is going to have this memory of sitting at my feet, of communing with me, even if it was only for a half an hour or an hour. Mary will forever hold on to this memory. She will never forget that she sat with me. And Martha, you will have a memory of having prepared a meal. You see how important it is to do the important things. Sit in his presence. You see, we are so consumed with getting to the next thing. And we even do it in church. We come to church and we've got to get to the next song. And we've got to get through the song so we can get to the announcement. And we've got to get through the announcement so we can get and we got to get so we can have the message. And then we got to get through that so we can pray. And then football's coming on, so we got to go out. And we're always trying to get to the next thing. And Jesus says, stop! When are you going to stop and sit at my feet? Because when all this is over, what are you going to have memories of? Are you going to have memories of conducting services? Or are you going to have memories of having sat in my presence? You see, folks, this is what is most important. And Jesus says she's doing what's most important. And we saw a symptom of it the other night. Pastor, on a Wednesday, Pastor said, I just want to pray. I just feel led that we should pray. And everybody looked at each other like, what? Wednesday night? We don't pray on Wednesday night. Wednesday night's not for prayer. Wednesday's for teaching. And everybody just kind of looked around. And Pastor started praying. Because it's more important than we have another Bible class is that we sit in the presence of Jesus. And if our pastor has heard from God and he comes in and says, you know what? We just need to seek God today. We're not going to crack a book. We're not going to even open our Bibles. We're going to sit in the presence of God and seek him. Then we need to get behind that. Because being in the presence of Jesus is the most important thing. What do we want to do in this church? We want to reach people. We want to restore lives. We want to reveal God. Right? We want to change the world. Pastor has a vision of a worldwide ministry. He has a vision of a ministry that goes around the world. Well, you know who the people that do that are? Who are the ones who change the world? People who do things? People who have events? People who organize? Or is it people who have sat at the feet of Jesus? You see, the reason the church isn't changing the world is because we haven't sat at Jesus' feet yet. We've just conducted services. We've just had events. We've just done things. But until the church sits at the feet of Jesus and soaks up his essence and his presence and his power and his mission and his what's it called when you get sent out? His commission. Thank you. Then we won't change the world. Won't go there. I was going to. We've always got to get things done. Right? But we need to remember that those things never come at the top of the list. Acts chapter 4, verse 13. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I've noticed it. Who are the people who change the world? Put it up there. Yeah, thank you. That makes it easier. I can read that without my glasses. Now, when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were idiots, yeah, they were deplorables. They marveled. They could not believe that these men walked in authority and had power. And walk like apostles and walk like prophets. Because they were fishermen. They were just blue collar. We're white. We're the upper crust. They marveled and they took note or knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus. They had been with Jesus. They had been with Jesus, and now they were changing the world. Now, Peter and John, they were the fortunate. They were the blessed. They were one of the 12 who spent 3+ years with Jesus all the time. But Mary wasn't in that group. She didn't get to go with him everywhere she went. And so she knew that if I have him in my house for 2 hours, I'm going to spend 2 hours sitting at his feet, soaking up everything that he has for me. Why? Because when he's gone, I want to have a memory of being in his presence and knowing him. Not a memory of having made a good meal for 40 people. No, that's not what it's about. They took note of them that they had been with Jesus. I want you to know something, folks. If I'm ever laying up in the hospital again and my life is on the line, I don't want somebody to come and pray for me that has just conducted services. I don't want somebody to come and lay hands on me that has just organized events. I need somebody to come and pray for me who has been with Jesus, who knows him, who has been in his presence and knows his power. You see, that's what your coworkers need, folks. That's what your neighbors need. That's what the people in your family need. This is a power that walks into the enemy camp and the enemy lays down their weapons. This is a power that walks in to the enemy stronghold and conquers. Peter and John had been with Jesus, and when they walked up to the temple, there was a man that didn't. He had been begging there for years and years, and he was begging for money. And Pastor preached on it not too long ago. I remember Jesse sitting up here pretending to be a cripple. And I guess it was Peter said, I don't have any money, but I've got something that I can give you. I've been with Jesus, and I'm going to give you what he gave me. You can't give it away till you have it. You can't have it until you sit at his feet. Do you want to change the world? Do you want to change your family? Do you want to change your neighborhood? Do you want to change your job? You got to do something different. You got to get to the feet of Jesus. Now I'm going to make one more point and I'm going to close. I don't even know how far I've gone because I don't have my watch. It's in my briefcase. What? Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. What does she want from him? What does she want from him? What did she ask for from him? What did you say? What did you say?
Nothing.
Nothing. Thank you. You helped me preach. She sat at the feet of Jesus and asked for nothing. Pastor has told us that our emphasis in this coming year is going to be on eternity. And that we in a church have gotten too focused on getting our stuff from God. But we need to have more of an eternal focus. We need to have more of a focus on eternity and what we can give to God. And I want you to know something, folks. She did not ask for a thing from Jesus. She did not get anything from Jesus that is recorded. But at the same time, she got everything. Amen? So what are we talking about eternity when we talk about this woman? Well, forever, she had that memory of being in his presence. But more than that, what does the Bible say? He says, heaven and earth shall pass away, shall never pass away. And this story is in the Word of God forever. Because she didn't care about getting her stuff from God. She just wanted to be in his presence. And so for eternity, this is an example, and this is a model of how we should approach God. So when we come to church, we don't need to be rushing to get to the next song or the next part of the service or get to the message or get to the prayer. We need to focus on, God, are we sitting at your feet right now? Are we sitting in your presence right now? Are we going to leave changed because we've been in your presence? I want us to stand together. And I want us to pray. Just raise your hands up to the Lord and just start communing with him. If you know him, you know what he wants from you. If you don't know him today,